Everybody, welcome to this CubeSys discussion series. Another one in our series of AVD discussion series. If you want to look at the others in this series, they're available on our YouTube channel and on LinkedIn and various other places, discussing everything, full journey of AVD, from understanding what it is right through some very specific use cases. Today, we're going to be focusing on AVD in the manufacturing vertical and understanding how it can assist in solving some manufacturing related IT problems. The session today will be recorded and it will be available, sent out to everyone in the meeting, and will be available on YouTube and other places later. If you want to ask questions throughout, please do. Please use the either just ask or use the chat session to ask a question. We've got both Microsoft and our CubeSys engineering team represented here today. I will go on to our next slide and introduce us. Firstly, my name is Ian Baxter. I am the Associate Director of Delivery here at CubeSys, which means I'm responsible for all our professional and managed service delivery. I come from 25 years in working in EUC environments and leveraging EUC technology to deliver business-friendly outcomes and solve business problems in multiple industries. And over the last couple of years with CubeSys, we probably delivered, must be getting nearly up to 100 AVD projects now, certainly in the 80s or 90s, across all different healthcare to manufacturing to government to engineering. There's a lot of advancements been going on in the AVD space, and a lot of value being returned on the investment within it. But George, I'll hand over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ian. So, hi guys, my name is George Zarkowski. I'm one of the senior cloud consultants at CubeSys. My background is sort of modern management and VDI. Over the past 10 plus years, I've been doing a lot of VDI projects. So when AVD came out, I sort of jumped on it straight away. As Ian suggested, we've done over like 50 to 100 projects easily at CubeSys. So I'm pretty knowledgeable in that space. So if you have any questions or anything like that, please come off mute and just ask them in the chat.
And I'm Paul Matra. I'm part of the Microsoft team in the Azure business area. I focus on helping organizations with those business critical apps that they have, all the workloads in their organizations, and moving them to the Azure cloud. The group I sit in is in the mid-enterprise area, and it really is a really unique and interesting segment in Microsoft to be in, because we have very large organizations and also mid-tier and low, small parts of businesses looking at how they can look at those workloads, get into cloud, and how best to optimize that and use it in a hybrid environment. For the last 12 months, I've been really focused in on the manufacturing vertical in that segment, and it's been a really interesting 12 months in that manufacturing vertical with a lot of the challenge they're doing. But it's an extremely important vertical for us as Microsoft. They do a lot for us, and they are actually addressing a lot of challenges that other organizations and other segments are doing. So I'm really excited to be party with the CubeSys guys to talk through this series with them.
Excellent, thanks, Paul. Okay, so look, we've got just a bit of just an overview here of some of the Gartner's insights into the manufacturing industry and where IT spend is going over the next 12 months. It's not too dissimilar to the rest of the industry. There are some unique manufacturing applications here. Certainly, firewalling on separate networks for operational technology against IT and how to merge those two together has always been a constant challenge in manufacturing, especially with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the highest percentage of where spend is going. That is not unlike the rest of the organizations and industries. It's something we're all dealing with on a daily basis, is the increased threat of cybersecurity and the complexity of cybersecurity attacks. But the key thing I think I took out of this, the top priorities for manufacturing for the next 12 months is growth, cost optimization, efficiency, and digital transformation, which are three things that AVD absolutely shines at. From whether it's the ability to scale instantly from 20 desktops to 2,000 desktops, leveraging the cloud environment, to scale in different directions, to need more memory, more processor, different graphics cards, the ability to do that quickly overnight, or even a drop of a hat based on project or operational requirements, is AVD's ACE card. Custom optimization, for the same reason, is that you can turn them all back off when you're not using them, and you've not got this big on-prem investment in tin that you're looking after in data centers. Both of those are, of all our customers, and all that we do for a lot of our customers before we deploy AVD, is we usually do a cost assessment for them, and there's never been one that's not shown a significant cost reduction. So even just on dollars alone, it's an excellent proposition. So
I think the other thing there as well is, I mean, you've always got the latest and greatest on tap, right? So whenever new revisions and things like that come out, you know, you're always sort of on the ball there. You've got access to that from day dot.
Yeah, and not to talk to digital transformation, it's a VDI technology which we've had for a long time. It's just a very clever modern VDI which gives you a lot more flexibility around it. So from a digital transformation, it's very much a supporting technology for digital transformation. It enables you to shift users around en masse between different platforms, or access internet only or SaaS platforms, or other things you're doing. It gives you a really good managed, secure gateway to access all the platforms that you're transforming and moving people around. We've even used it for things like AD migrations or AD modernizations, where we've been moving people between domains, and AVD is incredibly good for spinning up almost another environment next to your own. So it is very supportive of that digital transformation work as well. Just moving on to more around some of the, into a bit more detail of the benefits within manufacturing. I think I mentioned earlier on about that operational resilience. So you're not using the you're not reliant on tin, metal, air conditioning, power supply, all those elements of it, obviously you normally have to do with a large VDI farm. You can leverage Microsoft, which is resilient by nature, by using Microsoft regions. They have inbuilt resilience in them within those zones as well. You can even take that a step further and have resilience across different Azure regions as well if you need to. Anything to add to that, George, on operational resilience?
Yeah, look, I think just the whole thing, like you mentioned, right? So you're no longer looking at managing it yourself, right? So Microsoft sort of takes that and handles that for you. I think a lot of the other stuff as well, when it comes to AVD, that people miss is, you know, things like brokers, connection servers, databases, that kind of stuff, right? So you no longer have to look at managing that. Microsoft does it for you. It's all highly available, highly redundant, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it just takes a lot of work sort of off the I guess the technicians to look at managing those environments.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of like, I'll chime in and add a little bit to that based on the previous slide. We talked around the trends and what the vertical is focusing on. I was in the last 12 months, the manufacturing segment's been looking at how do we optimize, and probably in the last 3 to 4 months, that language has changed to how do I improve my productivity, which is another way of looking at how do I reduce my costs, get the operational benefits and the resilience of that. So how do I turn that on? How do I turn that off? And how do I make that perform at its peak? And that's where the operational resilience come in to some of those other points that we've got on the slide as well.
Excellent. Those good points. So in the look, moving on, that good segue into agility and flexibility. I think it's very hard to call out very specific enhancements of flexibility. AVD is it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife to use it for what you need to use it for. I was trying to think before the session about some really good examples in manufacturing and some other. I've had some experience doing this in heavy industrial areas, not manufacturing, but certainly industrial areas. And around being able to provide kind of, if you've got applications on factory floors that require heavy amounts of compute, with AVD, you can allow people to use a very thin piece of equipment, a laptop or something, to access that heavy compute stuff. You don't have to be having heavy compute and high compute capability in factory floors. You can put all that compute in the cloud and access it with a laptop. Again, means you can move those devices around factory floors without jumping from OT to IT networks as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Some other elements of AVD. AVD is the only VDI that allows you to run Windows 10 or 11 natively. So it's not a server operating system. It is a desktop class operating system, which is better for end users and training and education and all the other bits and pieces.
Ian, just on that as well, when you think of applications like Autodesk, Revit, Civil 3D, all those kind of stuff, right? Traditionally, you don't really want to be running them on a server OS. So when it comes to Windows 10, Windows 11, you sort of get that native experience. It's seamless. The users know what they're doing. The data's there. And then obviously, when you start looking at virtual machines that have got GPUs attached to them in the back end, it works natively as if it was, like a physical laptop in front of the user, because it's got that performance in the background. It's pretty seamless to the end user.
Yeah, we've had some pretty high-end customers globally look at that agility and flexibility with high compute environments. Like we've got Alstom that were able to move 2,000 designers at the time of COVID hitting us all to be remote at-home hybrid workers. So that needed to understand how do you get those apps out to those people at different remote locations, but get that performance and resilience happening for those guys in a really agile and flexible manner, because who knew what time these staff would be coming into log. So that gives you both the cost management element of doing that, as well as being able to turn on and have the data reside in your center and push that back out to those end users. So that also touched on probably the next point, the data security elements of this.
Yeah, no, that is a good segue into data security, which is the key advantages of VDI is the data, and the information never ever leaves the data center. It's just everything clients out to that's accessing the data. This is also where you can start to leverage your other Microsoft licensing investments. So you're using the front door for this environment because it is AAD, Azure AAD, and that gives you access to all the MFA, conditional access, all the other advanced security and the Defender functionality you have on your Azure front door. This just leverages that very simply. No need to recreate all those policies. No need to reinvent anything. You just leverage all of those things across that. Anything else on that?
Look, it obviously integrates with everything in Azure, right? So you got like Sentinel and all the other sort of high-end stuff that you can deploy to a RISA AVD is really, really native when it comes to sort of using it as a Azure native tool set in the background, really.
Excellent. So improved collaboration and mobility. We've touched these all start to merge together because they're all just one big Venn diagram. So we talked about the Windows 10 and the Windows 11 native, which means gives a user experience for the Office suite and all things like that. So it's not running on a server OS if you need them. It also this works anywhere there's an internet connection. So you leverage all the security elements you've already got in place. So as long as there's an internet connection, this is a functional environment. And don't worry about VPNs or all the other bits and pieces that go with that. And also the speed. So if you are leveraging SharePoint, OneDrive, and all the other M365 functions for your daily driver knowledge worker type stuff and all your email and document management, then this environment sits on the backbone with all that environment. So you're getting insanely fast speeds when you're opening and closing SharePoint. That's all happening in the cloud, but these things are all sat next to each other in the same environment. It's super fast, super snappy. You're not dragging stuff up and down all the time. And also the OneDrive element can work inside of the AVD as well. So if people are shifting from factory floor back to office desk or home or wherever they are, their AVD session can leverage the OneDrive sync agent the same way their laptop can. From a productivity point of view, because the user is in synchronicity for all the Word, Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, no matter which environment they're jumping in and out of. They're all in sync, all at the same point that they were. So that's my background. Is I come from a document management, large engineering firm basis over the 15 years, 20 years ago I started there actually. But yeah, we didn't have this technology. It was horrific trying to move data around the world and trying to move projects around the world and move people. But this stuff, the Microsoft toolset just works really well now. The new OneDrive and SharePoint stuff is pretty impressive. I don't think there's any restrictions on that anymore. There used to be some engineering file restrictions. AutoCAD never used to play nicely and learn a few other things, but they all do now. Just works. It's a great tool set. Anything the others want to add on to that?
No, mate, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. The only other thing that I might
that is my sweet spot. If I'm honest, I could talk about that for another hour, but it's that is my particular pet passion, the collaboration mobility piece. Cost reduction. We spoke about cost reduction. The main obvious driver for cost reduction here is that you only need to pay for what you're actually using. That's a cloud benefit all over, and AVD and other tool sets can give you the ability to really only ever use what you need to use. We use and recommend a product called Nerdio, which is an excellent automation management platform for AVD, which can help you with things like only have certain machines on at certain points of the day. I need to have 2 or 3 machines ready or sessions up to handle a login storm in the morning. But that thing will work all day. If 1,000 people turn up, it will just scale up and up and up and up and run the machines. And as people log out, it will just turn them all back off again. So you're only ever paying for what you use. Paul mentioned support for COVID environments. We had a lot of customers using this throughout COVID. And every time there was a snap lockdown, and one in particular, I remember there was a government agency down in South Australia, and South Australia had a snap lockdown, sent everybody home very, very short notice. They went from 15 users in AVD to 500 users in AVD, and no one did anything. It just did it itself. It automated up, and as people came out, it turned them all back off again. So absolute cost management, and only paying for exactly what you need to pay. No, if you've got on-prem, obviously you've got to pay a fixed capex for a room with the metal in it. This is the cost savings same, especially depending on your licensing arrangements as well. If you've got an E3 already, you're already licensed to use the platform. Your only investment is to build and then run, but your licensing costs are already all covered. It's pretty much. I don't think there's anything else to touch on there as well. That's a reasonably simple story. The cost reduction, it's about that scale up, scale down quickly. High capacity computing. This is somewhere where AVD has come on a lot, and Azure has come on a lot in the last 12 months. Again, myself from the engineering background, we always used to use VDI for this kind of workloads, but it was always very difficult to virtualize graphics, and to run graphics on remote VDI platforms was always difficult. That's not the case anymore. Microsoft have an excellent selection of NVIDIA cards, AMD cards. There's lots of different cards in there, graphics cards and options available, whether you're using graphics cards for high-end compute or you're using graphics for 3D compute. There's also, again, that scaling thing. So high capacity compute, there is a SKU in the Microsoft environment, and I can't remember how many cores it's got, but it's got like there's 2 terabytes of RAM. I think one of the SKUs is it's something insane. It's about $500,000 a year to run. I'm glad
you didn't throw that one to me, Ian. I was have to go bring the price calculator out.
No, but there is a SKU in there that is huge, and it's $500,000 a year to run it. But the point is, you don't pay $500,000. You turn it on for 20 minutes and turn what would have been a 10-hour job into a 20-minute job, and it costs you like $25 to run it for that 20 minutes. We've done quite a lot of work with customers around that, especially around modeling, and if you do modeling or high-end compute stuff, there's a lot of other things you can do in Azure with batch processing. And one customer, we span up like 1,000 machines for about an hour and turned a 2-week modeling process into an hour, just by being able to have that scale and that CPU power available to you. But there's a lot that can be done in that high capacity computing space.
Yeah, I might add a couple of proof points in that topic there. If you look at the manufacturing vertical, there is, when you get a look at those apps or those uses of that high capacity compute environments, either looking at what am I doing for my product lifecycle management, so that whole digital engineering, how am I developing that and making that from go to consumption to back in again across the whole value chain. The second part is probably the thing we've already been talking a little bit about is CAD designing. How do you do the design element of this? In terms of, are you a discrete manufacturer? Is it process manufacturing you're looking at, or is it the other end, which we have a lot of ag manufacturers and farming manufacturers in our vertical? But then the third element is looking how you're simulating the use of your product. You're either in discrete manufacturing or process manufacturing of, and how do you improve that? So how do you look at the ways of improving that? And I'll put 2 proof points in it. One, they're global brands, well-known brands. Rolls-Royce Engineering, they looked at their jet systems to look at how do they improve performance through fuel and airflow usage. So they used AVD in these high computing environments to get benefits around that aspect of improving that product, getting those engines out. And again, touching on those points above in a flexible way that could be scaled and effectively manage costs. The second one I'll use, which I'm a bit of a motorsport fan, the Volkswagen Motorsport team, to get ready for the Pikes Peak International. They had to develop and build an electric car, and they had to get that tuned and simulated. So they had 9 months to do that, to design, test, and build the electric car. I wouldn't say we were the main result for them to achieve their fastest ever course time, but we're one of many elements of that chain to help them in that cycle of developing electric car and getting it up to that podium position. So there's a couple of examples there in that manufacturing environment of using high capacity compute environments to support that whole product life cycle designing and simulation effort.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. Some really good examples there. So, okay, so moving on into mergers and acquisitions now. I believe in most sectors at the moment, there's a lot of economic volatility and a lot of companies buying and selling and moving around and demerging and divisions and moving them around again. This is AVD is a really, really, really quick and easy way to bring people into organisations to spin environments up for them to support the M365 platform that you're probably going to be merging email in and out of, and documentation and everything else into SharePoint and all the other online platforms. This is a really quick way of getting desktop environments out to potentially new staff in a very, very quick manner, because then you don't need to worry too much about the security of the actual end-to-end device they're on, whether it's their personal device or whether it's if there's a grace period where they're using the equipment from the previous organization or on the previous networks. It's a really, really good stepping stone and a really good way to spin up an environment that can help bring end users into a new environment and do it quickly. I've done a lot of merger work over my career and pre-AVD, but there was a lot of very long weekends building massive amounts of PCs, closing a business on a Friday night, and then working flat out 2 18-hour days over the weekend to have that environment ready to be in a new world on Monday morning. AVD takes a lot of that effort out, so you can be a bit more planned around your any hardware rollouts you need to do. Very, very supportive in that nature. And again, only need to pay for what you use for it and spin it up very, very, very quickly.
The last 12 months with me focusing down and supporting the manufacturing vertical, yes, they've been through mergers and acquisitions and also divestments, unfortunately. So it's been a really interesting segment to help and support through that cycle. We've got a customer in New Zealand at the moment who's doing their AVD deployment, and you mentioned Nerdio, using Nerdio to help manage the ongoing costs with that as well. They were fortunate enough to be in the acquisition phase, but they clearly are singing the praises of using this type of solution in that cycle you talked about, Ian. So I suppose the whole 6 points, there's value around tackling the challenge around improving productivity or optimizing costs in a flexible scale and secure manner. There's many examples we can take. It takes people through that.
Yeah. Excellent. So just moving on, so this was just a bit of a visual, more Gartner data, just to back up what we're talking about. The cost. This is a kind of an overall review across multiple sectors, multiple environments, but over several years of looking at it. This data's been checked over a couple of years, but it highlights the productivity gains and the cost gains of AVD. Just really a visual to back up the conversation we were just having.
Look at that. We've all got different analyst reports and case studies. This was a Forrester study that we commissioned a couple of years back to look at the value of this. But I think we can all talk about the value and do customer proof points. I think the best thing to probably try and move into now is how do you go about doing this? Because that's the key thing. That's why Microsoft had partners like CubeSys, because we can develop the product, but it's how you get it out there, how do you deploy it into an environment. And I think they're probably good points to focus on and to work through how do you get this going and how do you do this that makes it successful as an end deliverable.
Yeah, back to my previous point earlier on, we spoke about we work with Microsoft a lot with a lot of new customers when we're doing proof of concept. The first thing we will do is a cost assessment. So we have a very robust cost assessment process we use now to understand people's existing run cost and give them an idea of where they're going to be. I agree with that. 59% on the deployment and maintenance. That is where all the juice is in that. The maintenance only reduction is quite high. But yes, there's a lot of work you can do to understand where those cost savings are going to be, and then run proof of concepts. Let's say we work very closely with Microsoft and do quite a lot of loads of proof of concepts. Okay, I'm going to let George talk a bit more now. We'll get a bit more into some of the best practice around some of the technology. George, I see you're having issues with your camera there, turning off. So.
Yeah, my apologies. It keeps turning on and off. It must be the dock that it's connected to, but I'll just leave it off for the time being. Just wanted to talk a little bit around some of the best practices. So CPU versus GPU rendering. So a lot of the applications these days that I'm seeing that are moving to AVD, whether they're high performance compute or their graphical workloads, you sort of need to understand where the application itself is doing the rendering. Applications that do like number crunching and that kind of stuff use more CPU. Whereas if you've got applications like AutoCAD and you're doing like 3D wireframes and that kind of stuff, you probably want to look at GPU rendering. So just be mindful that there are different, I guess, SKUs that you can use to tackle, or pick the better SKU for the application that you intend on running. So just be mindful of that. The next one there is premium disks. So what I'm seeing as well is when deploying AVD, some customers are not using premium disks when they're using multi-session AVD hosts. So essentially what you want to do is you don't want to use standard SSDs because they don't provide the throughput that you need when multiple users are on that VM launching applications, that kind of stuff. So just be mindful. It'd probably be good to look at upgrading to premium disk, and especially when you're doing some of these workloads with large jobs, large render jobs, batch jobs, that kind of stuff. You certainly want some of the throughput in the back end so that you can render jobs correctly and save your files as needed. The next one there, routing or RDP short path. When users are sort of in the office and they're accessing a AVD virtual machine, sometimes the best path might not be to go out via the internet. If you enable RDP short path for managed network, so your internal network, you can redirect that traffic over your express route. So your express route might be a different connection, a bigger WAN connection, that kind of stuff. So you would have sort of more line of sight to the virtual machine rather than going through your ISP and then sort of hopping around the world to get to your virtual machine. So probably a good idea to turn on RDP short path, and you will see a big increase in latency to those virtual machines when using some of these bigger workloads. Number of users, again, this is sort of, I guess, comes down to multi-session, single session. So if you are using a multi-session environment and you've got a GPU workload, you've got 2 or 4 people on that machine all doing rendering jobs, that kind of stuff, you sort of want to be mindful of not overloading those VMs or over provisioning the number of users on the VM. So there's not sort of one size fits all. You sort of need to do a little bit of testing and see where the best sweet spot is for your environment. But just be mindful of the number of users that you're putting on virtual machines so you don't overload them and stress them out. One that I see is missed a lot is the GPU GPO. So in the Microsoft documentation, there is actually 3 GPOs that you can set that talk about GPU accelerated app rendering, frame encoding, and video encoding. A lot of people don't turn these on, and then they wonder why some of the applications that they're launching are sort of not leveraging or not running smoothly when using GPU VMs. You actually need to enable these, so don't forget to turn that on, depending on what SKU you're running in Azure. Application testing, that one there sort of comes back to the number of users that you're running. When you're testing these applications, you obviously want to make sure that the application itself can support multi-session. If you're doing a multi-session deployment, you obviously want to make sure that you're licensed to use it in an AVD environment. But then most importantly, you want to do some application testing to see which GPU is the best bang for buck for your environment. Some NVIDIA SKUs might be good, some AMD ones might be good. Then you got Intel, AMD CPUs as well. So just do a little bit of testing around that and sort of see where the sweet spot is when you do sort of some benchmarking tool sets. Data and workloads. So this one here refers to where your users are running their projects from, right? I see a lot of people that are running AVD are sort of looking at a network share that's on-prem and they're pulling large files or they're working from those network shares on-premise. You certainly want to bring the workload as close as possible to the virtual machine, or even copy it to the virtual machine. So like on a secondary disk or something like that, or even run NetApp files or Azure files or something like that and copy those files up so that when you do use those projects, that the workload is as close as possible to the compute. And then finally, that last one there, Windows optimization. So people that are generally working on some of these AutoCAD design products, you probably want to run Windows optimization toolset. So these are things provided by Microsoft, or it goes through and it strips out some of the services, some of the things that is embedded in Windows that isn't really required for some of these use cases. So like things like Xbox, Game Center, that kind of stuff. You can really strip all of that and really optimize your AVD images. That's pretty much all I had. Ian, do you want to just go to the next slide?
Sure.
I just wanted to show you guys. So when Microsoft first announced GPU support, I jumped on board and quickly downloaded Microsoft Flight Simulator just to test it. I didn't have any CAD software at the time, so this was the best that I could do. But basically, this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, I think it is, with a Tesla GPU, I think it is, running at pretty much 100% with all settings maxed out, and it was actually running really, really smooth. So if it can run games and that kind of stuff, you'd be very surprised at how good it would run sort of some of these AutoCAD products where you're doing 3D rendering, wireframes, that kind of stuff. So yeah, just thought that'd be cool to add that in there.
No, it's good. It's a good demonstration that it's not a bit of a gimmicky kind of like, oh, we've got some GPU now. That it's real GPU and it's as good as GPU as you can get in a workstation class desktop. So it's we've done this in the office just to test it. Like I was in the office with George when he was playing that, and you honestly could not tell that was running remotely in the cloud at the time. It's very good. I think, George, I've seen you do a presentation where you do the MotoGP game as well. That works pretty well in there.
Yeah, MotoGP was cool. I've got to think of another game for the next ones, and I might even look at doing some sort of LAN party on the same machine, and get a couple of people dialing in and running it just to test performance.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll reiterate, GPU support in VDI was always a bit of a best effort. It's not best effort anymore. It is full GPU support. So, cool. So, just moving on, we're just going to talk about. So, Paul, you're going to run us through some Microsoft case studies. You're muted, Paul.
Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, I mentioned earlier a few global brands that we've helped in terms of their challenge and how to utilize AVD as a way of supporting them through those use cases and ways to get their businesses working. What we've got here, we've got a snapshot of some of our other global customers that have used the Azure Virtual Desktop environments. They're going across North America and European and organizations there. So it's really just some more proof points for you. You can get onto the Microsoft website for more detail on each and every one of those ones, but it's more just saying there are customers out there that are using this and getting the value points that we discussed through the previous slides. I think we got another one to talk about in more detail coming up, which is the tile company in Netherlands. Now, the reason we've put this one in here is because it probably started with the challenge most manufacturers have, which is aging infrastructure, on-prem environments, potential compelling events around what we talked about previously with addressing needs to adapt and deploy new heavy load, thick client software in aging technology in a hybrid manner. Most manufacturers look at this and go, well, I need to still keep on-prem environments, but I need to get the value and the benefit of the clouds. So this one, Moser looked at it from a perspective of not just how do I get some of these applications out there, but I look at it a holistic of these apps need high compute environments, but they need to also work in with still apps that remain on-prem, but it's aging. So that's when we look at things like Azure Stack HCI with Azure Arc, with the Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, they have used all those environments to help with their distribution supply of tiles around 50 countries. They've used, we've mentioned NetApp files, there's Cisco blades, there's a whole heap of stuff that they looked at capitalizing and using here to get the value points that we talked through. So again, this is on our website. You can go and have a look at more detail, but I put it in there because it's a highlight of just not AVD, but how you can use other areas to get a future-proof and modern environment going in that challenging manufacturing environment of I still need to have a hybrid environment. I've got hard, high-end compute. I have a challenge that I need to keep some of these apps working near the machinery. So this is where the likes of AVD and others come into play. So that's why we put this one here towards the end to give a bit of a lens of the case study there of different Azure services being utilized here for a holistic solution.
Excellent, good stuff, Paul. So that's look, just very conscious of the time, and so it's probably start to wrap up the process now. Are there any questions from the room? Anything you'd like us to dive a little bit deeper onto? Okay, not a problem. So we can look start to wrap up the session now. So you heard me mention Nerdio throughout that process. So CubeSys are partners with Nerdio, and we use them extensively in our AVD environments. We've been a very early adopter of the Nerdio platform. We don't partner that much with many people. We like to own our own IP and do our own work and do our own smarts. And Nerdio is the one product that we have got value out of, and it's a very impressive environment, the Nerdio platform for managing AVD, especially from everything from cost efficiency right through to managing your SOE and your application deployment. Excellent product. And Cloud Clarity is a product that CubeSys have developed, which is to help people manage AVD costs at scale, from tagging and understanding exact costs. We use a lot of this for Nerdio, for AVD products, to help us understand costs right down to the cost per session, per user, per network, per disk. What has one person used for every session? It's really good for if you have to do chargeback or showback accounting inside your environment to understand exactly what it's cost. You can reach out to us to talk about any one of those two products if you want a bit more detail. If you do have other questions, you can reach out directly to myself and George. You can find us on LinkedIn. Our email addresses will be in the pack. We are both very passionate about this technology, and will happily bore and talk for hours and hours about this stuff and use cases and ways to be smart with it. And always happy to talk to people about it. And then I will just finish up and say, I say this has been part of our CubeSys discussion series. There is another, I think, about 8 or 9 of these that have done come previous. They are available on our YouTube channel, and you can find them if you look at our LinkedIn page. You'll get links to them from there. I'd just like to thank George and Paul for their input today. It's very useful and very resourceful information. Thank you for both of that. Any closing comments from either of you?
No, thanks, Ian and George, for including me in the series. I love the fact that you're doing this and really taking us all on various journeys through how can use AVD. So thank you for focusing this series today on manufacturing.
Excellent. And thank you for the time to join us. All right, so I think we'll wrap up there, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next discussion series. Thank you, everybody.